I do have to say, since it's so cold here, and this is a fireside chat, where is our fire? It's a little chilly without it.
Inside, Michael. Your fire's inside.
Yeah. But absolutely happy to be here today and to share a little bit in regards to what Jess has to share with us from IBM. I am from iNvolved Media. I run our media and advertising specialty in regards to what we do from a digital advertising standpoint. So we're going to talk a little bit about data and some transformation. And, I know IBM really from the side of data and how we use it, and it influences us from weather data and influencer data and everything from that standpoint, that we actually can reach consumers in a certain way and make sure that we have the right targeting and hit them with the right message at the right time. And I know that your team specifically does a lot around that. So I want to get to know, your role exactly and your team and what you guys really produce in a day in and day out side of the business.
Certainly. So I'm CTO of the marketing stack in IBM. So a lot of my role is specifically focused on how we optimize our stack to deliver our client needs and really try to achieve the business goals that we're shooting for. As part of that, we also have a fairly large data and analytics team that's really looking at all of our marketing performance and trying to optimize it.
So whenever you talk about the data and the optimizing of what you're actually working with within the call it data and tech stack, can you tell us a little bit about how that ties back to IBM as a whole, your business goals, and ultimately, like, what are you trying to achieve with the outcomes of what you call business goals and what you're actually trying to produce?
Yeah. Well, ultimately what we're trying to get to is really getting the full end-to-end 360 client experience. When I first started about 3 years ago, we had well over 200 different systems in our stack, most of which were not particularly connected, and we had a very disjointed experience for our clients. So a lot of what we've been focused on is trying to get that integration so that we can really get the performance metrics that we're looking for to try to make sure that every message that we put out there resonates with our end audience.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it goes back to, we depend a lot on that data for that right message, right, on the media side of things and making sure we're reaching the right consumers. I know recently, IBM, we talked a little bit about how you had some business transformation in regards to what was happening from a consumer standpoint, ultimately. Can you tell us a little bit about how you actually defined that you had this challenge, and then what steps you took to actually go through that transformation?
Yeah, certainly. So about a year and a half ago, we started a major initiative to essentially blow up our stack, to attempt to solve some of these issues. And in doing so, stood up 5 different Adobe products and shut down 4 different platforms, all within that year and a half. And with that, it sounds a little crazy that we would do that all at once, but for us, it was really around trying to transform more than the 2% we had done in prior initiatives. Every other time we've tried to do this, we just do 1 or 2 stack pieces, and then we mess it up with our own business process. So this was a great opportunity for us to say, where should we be? And then make that happen, right? Instead of trying to customize the platforms too much, let's actually use the platforms for what they're good at and change ourselves. So we did a major reorg and a bunch of things related to that. We actually dropped the whole notion of business units, which, if anyone's ever followed IBM for years, all of our stuff is business units, which is not particularly client-centric. So we've made an effort to drop all of that and kind of refocus where we are. And in, I guess it's about a month or so ago now, we did essentially a new campaign that's all about kind of restating our prior initiatives, right? The whole new message is about, let's create something together versus us just trying to sell, like a Power Z server or something along those lines. So it's been really interesting to see how that's starting to get a little traction.
That's great. It sounds like a lot that you blew up, as you say, and a lot of opportunity for the consumer journey, right? To be able to drive a more meaningful touch point for them. Yep. At this point, have you all already seen some positive response from any data insights that you can share with us?
Oh, absolutely. I would say some of the most immediate things that we saw was efficiencies in our own work process. And I realize that doesn't speak as much to the client experience, but for us it was, a web page went from being a 3-week process to a day, which is major for us as a business. And with all of this new technology, we can now hyper-personalize it for our clients. So we now have the data connections. We can go, we know what you own, we know what you're doing, assuming that you let us know what you're doing, and then can make sure that we have the right offers in all the digital channels. And that seems to be resonating. We're getting a lot of traffic. We're getting a lot of additional sales and things associated with it. So it seems to be going in the right direction.
Wow, that's really great. The experience that you're describing of building something together, was that correct?
Yeah.
And if you think about like the data cloud and what you all offer to kind of have that for a business, opportunity, can you give us just a little bit of an example of how that works together? Like what if I'm, the individual for a business seeking that out, like what does that look like in regards to my new experience with you?
Well, like I said, the new experience gives us a capability to understand across the board what you have.
Yeah.
And whether it's with us or with another company, that helps us figure out what the right solution is for you. A lot of our clients are fairly early on in their kind of maturity arc. And so it's helpful to know some of that and the technologies at play internally so that we can recommend the right tooling for them. Right, and in cases where it's applicable, we can also provide services to help them implement. Right, a lot of our clients aren't as savvy about how they can leverage some of the data technologies to really get to their end goals.
Got it. So it's really making a little bit more of a one-stop shop in some cases where maybe they didn't even know everything you had to offer before when they were trying to build something out,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we also have a lot of the self-serve products. Like if anyone goes to our cloud marketplace, there's a ton of things that you can play around with relatively for free and experiment with to see what you can build.
Awesome. To kind of talk a little bit about the transformation from a branding standpoint, tell us a little bit about what changed from there, from like the look and the feel. We talked about the solution side of it, but what about from an actual marketing side? And
so we're really trying to simplify. We have a tendency to be very wordy. And geeky. So we're trying to make it so that all of our messaging is much simpler, much cleaner, very focused on the client compared to talking about ourselves. Because we're here to help our clients solve their problems and deliver on their needs.
Yeah. That's the experience is the consistency that I hear that you all are changing, and obviously you mentioned about a month ago is when a lot of this started to fully be placed. How does the near future look for? Is there a phase 2? Are you taking learnings? Tell us a little bit about like what that looks like in the future.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of the brand stuff that we've rolled out has a very narrow scope right now. So I'm in the middle of working with our digital team to roll it out globally. We're hoping to do that within the next 6 months or so. We have a lot of web pages, so it's a lot to update, and we're trying to cull while we're doing it. So we're very much like hyper-focused on looking at what's gaining traction with some of our clients and what isn't, and trying to optimize and test along the way. Excellent.
Can you give us any, I mean, obviously not real specifics, but can you give us just an example of like some type of the test that you're actually taking as objectives that you want to, make a hypothesis or actually make an optimization towards?
So we do a lot of tests on a regular basis. It's one of the things that we've actually done for years. So we kind of have a mandate internally that anyone that owns a web page has to run a certain number of tests on it in any given week to try to tweak it to the finite point. The tests go everywhere from labeling of CTAs to swapping out content against certain audiences, and even experimenting with the forms of content of where someone is in the funnel, right? Because what we're really trying to find with all of our data and other ecosystem things is what is the right message and the right piece of content to move someone where they are in the funnel with a particular product.
Yeah, it sounds very familiar to anybody in the ad world with running, 10 to 50 different versions of ads and optimizing towards exactly what you're describing with even the call to actions. In regards to the UI experience, is whenever you guys rolled this out, did you take a beta, approach to it, or is it technically kind of still in that approach right now?
I would say right now it's still in beta. We have our own design language like many companies do, and because this is the first step, we're iterating on that. We're very much focused on trying to streamline it as we move from the old model to the new one. And I'm trying to avoid the world, for those that know anything about web development, of layering CSS on top of CSS and slowing down the pages. So we're kind of taking a very, I would almost say, calculated approach to this to try to keep the experience fast and nimble.
Yeah, the attention span is definitely a challenge for, I think, all of us in the marketing world, and making sure that things are streamlined. So I could see where, taking those learnings and applying them very quickly, and making sure that you're adapting quite a bit. As it relates to kind of just the data side of things and the growth of IBM, is there anything that you can share with us that relate to where some of us are seeing challenges of data being more restricted, and anything from IBM's perspective on how you've seen growth maybe on actually providing like third-party data?
Well, the third-party data is a little interesting one. We try to not resell third-party data for a lot of reasons. We do try to help our clients optimize the first-party data that they have, especially as we move into the cookieless world, which will eventually probably come. We're trying to make sure that everyone, including ourselves, are optimizing the data that they already have. It's been a bit of a challenge even for us, because we do buy a lot of third-party data, like intent data and things along those lines, to make sure that our contact information is up to date. But we're trying to sort our own ways, especially like with PIPL out there and a bunch of the other laws. Like, how can we make the most of what we have and encourage clients to volunteer information so that we can try to support their needs without it feeling like we're being weird and creepy?
Yeah. And it has a nice feel to it of going back to building something together, right? Especially as brands directly are challenged to build out their own, CRM data, or making sure that they're really leveraging it now with, more restrictions in place. So that's great. Can you tell us anything about the roadmap of IBM in the near future? You guys have been around forever, and some of us really know you for core product, and some of us marketers know you for like the data side of thing. Anything further you can share from that side of just growth of IBM?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're very focused on data and AI, and obviously cloud. And a lot of net new products are rolling out in that space in the course of the next 6 months to a year. So we're very much focused on those, and you'll see a lot of the messaging that we're putting out in that time period is central to those new products.
So it's the growth of what we're all looking for, with data solutions and what you're aligning for the consumer experience, has a nice package, I'll say, in regards to what you're putting in market. Do you kind of view, we didn't hit on this quite in the beginning, but a little bit, do you view your B2B and B2C consumers in a different model whenever you guys are looking at the way that you're actually reaching them and what you're building out for that experience?
We do to some degree. While we're often known as a B2B company, we do a fair amount of what is close to B2C. In our case, the B2C audience is very much developers and smaller companies. And in a lot of that, we're trying to provide a lot of self-service products, as well as a community to help them really understand how to leverage what's out there. We do also a fair amount of stuff with students and education, in part so that people can even understand what's possible, whether they end up using our products or other products out there. I mean, for us, the student and the developer audience is massive.
Yeah. I'm sure that that's really a core part of growth, right? Obviously, as you're reaching students and solutions and getting them kind of back to the old Pampers model. But whenever you speak about students and how you're actually influencing them or getting them to use the product or know of the product, can you give a little bit more detail there?
Well, we do a lot of programs with colleges. We also do a lot of free training for different students, and just about any student that's interested in coming in can get certain products relatively for free. They can definitely do trials. A huge part of what we're trying to do is make sure, at least from a purely commerce standpoint, that we build a future pipeline. Right, so some of our interest in students and developers are knowing that people are going to move on and do other things. Right, and we're hoping that we can show them not only what's possible, and hopefully help them build something that will help the world, but eventually, as a company, invest in some of our products.
Yeah, it's a great go back to solution. When they may know you at one point in their life for something, and then hopefully carry them throughout their career, for further development or growth in regards to the business that they're managing. So, great. In regards to just checking our time here, we're doing all right, I think. Going along quickly. But as it relates to IBM's overall structure, you were talking about how your team works in a certain area, and whenever we were chatting one-on-one, you described a little bit of how your team works with other teams that influence the advertising side and so forth. Can you give us a little bit of just behind the curtain, on how your team is actually structured from that standpoint?
Yeah, certainly. As part of the rework, like I said, we got rid of business units, which was a major shift for us, and we divided marketing more around centralized discipline functions. So we've kind of gathered people globally around certain skill sets. My team in particular is very focused on the platform support, but we also have demand automation, we have digital strategy. All of those are now focused on trying to build end-to-end campaigns across all of the platforms in a far more strategic fashion than we did before. Part of why that matters versus the old business unit model is we're now focused on client journeys instead of selling one particular product with a campaign. And that's given us a lot of efficiencies and a lot more ability to focus on, not just our top products, but the ancillary products that go with them. Because often once you get someone in the door on one thing, they're going to want to invest in things that are related to it.
That's a interesting model, considering the loss of the business units and the way that you guys have really structured things in a different form to simplify it, really. And it probably drives a much easier experience to understand exactly what that user experience is and how to carry it through in certain verticals. So
well, it's great because we're actually talking to each other. Right, and planning it and caring about the end user instead of just worrying about metrics against a particular product.
Losing the swim lanes and working more collaboratively. That's great. So I didn't prep you for this one, but I think it's a little interesting knowing your backgrounds, on the agency side, going to brand side. I'm curious, just in your current role, what you really have found that's carried over, in the marketing and advertising space, and what you love about it ultimately, from what you may even miss about the agency side, for our fellow marketers.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings on this one because I was in the agency side for about 15 years, ironically with IBM as one of my clients. So one of the things that I sort of miss from the agency world is there was a lot more flexibility in the work that I wanted to do, and everything went much faster. And while faster can be both a curse and a blessing, one of the challenges that I've personally felt moving on the inside is that everything just goes much slower. Change is far more difficult. That said, I do love my job. I love the challenge of trying to tackle the giant puzzle that is our ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a blessing and a curse, right? But yeah, it's interesting whenever you do make that pivot, and I've heard from other marketers in regards to similar stories. But that's great. Thanks for sharing that. On a little more of a casual note, I know you're here for a short period. Do you have any plans of something specific you want to tackle in your little time here in Austin?
I am on a mission to go to Sam's for barbecue.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Awesome. I don't know if we have any locals that know Sam's, but I haven't been to Sam's. I know Salt Lick.
I've been told that I have to hit Sam's, so
Okay.
it's going to happen today.
Low Barbecue is one of my favorites on the east side, so definitely. Well, I think we have a little bit of time for questions in the audience that we can open up. Don't be shy.
Michael Jackson. Brothers, how lucky did I get?
All right. No questions. Oh, we got one back there.
Second.
Lynn, Mike, nice to meet you.
Nice
I'll
to
be
meet you.
introducing you too.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're getting ready for the poll.
Yeah, right? I heard a rumor that you're about to have a private jet show up.
Just a second of background in terms of how Involved Media positions itself in the marketplace and your relationship with Active and all that?
Yeah. So Involved Media is actually owned by Active International, a subsidiary of it, that we specialize in search, social, and programmatic advertising based on driving business outcomes. Everything from emerging brands who are actually looking to grow in the market, who are small, medium-sized brands, to larger companies that are looking to drive direct response. It's a little bit all over the spectrum in regards to what we do from a brand and a direct response standpoint. So, and we're also growing in the influencer space as that's more and more of a demand. So a little bit of everything. And then from the programmatic advertising side, we pivot into a lot of different areas that relate to digital out of home, OTT, CTV, and have a lot of different solutions with even our PMP services. So pretty much everything on the digital side. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Is everybody frozen out there? I tell you, we need that fire in here.
Right? It's warmed up a little bit. Come on. Yeah, there we go. We got it very nice.
All right. Well, thank you again, Jess. Appreciate the time. Thank you, everybody who joined us today.